When the sightseeing tour was over, Little Billy sat down again on the large branch and said to the whole company of Minpins, "Look, I've had a lovely time with you all, but how am I ever going to get home again? My mother will be going crazy." "You can never get down from this tree," Domini said. "I've told you that. If you're stupid enough to try, you'll be eaten up in 5 seconds. "Is it the Spiddler?" Little Billy asked. "Is it the terrible blood-suckling, tooth-pluckling, stone-chuckling Spiddler?" "I've never heard of any Spiddler," Domini said. "The one waiting for you down there is the fearsome Gruncher, the red-hot, smoke-belching Gruncher. He grunches up everything in the forest, and that's why we have to live up here. He's grunched up hundreds of humans and literally millions of Minpins. What makes him so dangerous is his amazing and magical nose. His nose can smell out a human or a Minpin or any other animal from 10 miles away. Then he gallops toward it at terrific speed. He can never see anything in front of him because of all the smoke he belches out from his nose and mouth. But that doesn't bother him. His nose tells him exactly where to go." "Why does he blow out all that smoke?" Little Billy asked. "Because he's got a red-hot fire in his belly," Domini said. "The Gruncher likes his meat roasted, and the fire roasts as it goes down." "Look," Little Billy said, "Gruncher or no Gruncher, I've simply got to get home somehow. I'll have to make a dash for it." "Don't try it, I beg you," Domini said. "The Gruncher knows you're up here. He's down there now, waiting for you. Climb down a bit lower with me, I'll show you." Domini walked easily straight down the side of the great tree trunk. Little Billy climbed carefully down after him, from one branch to the next. Soon below them they began to smell the revolting hot stench of the Gruncher's breath, and the thick orange-red smoke was now billowing up into the lower branches in the thick clouds. "What does he look like?" Little Billy whispered. "Nobody knows," Domini answered. "He makes so much steam and smoke you can never see him. If you're behind him, when you can sometimes catch a glimpse of the little bits of him because all the smoke is being blown out in the front. Some Minpins say they've seen his back legs, huge and black and hairy, shaped like a lion's legs, but 10 times as big. And it's rumored that his head is like an enormous crocodile's head, with rows and rows and rows of sharp-pointed teeth. But nobody really knows. Mind you, he must have gigantic nose holes to be able to blow out all that smoke." They stayed still, listening, and they could hear the Gruncher pawing the ground at the base of the tree with his giant hooves and snorting with greed. "He smells you," Domini said. "He knows you aren't far away. He'll wait forever to get you now. He adores humans and doesn't catch them very often. They're like strawberries and cream to him. You see, for months he's been living on a diet of Minpins, and 1,000 Minpins is not even a snack for him. That brute is ravenous." Little Billy and Domini climbed back up to the trees to see where all the other Minpins were gathered. They seemed glad to see Little Billy come safely back. "Stay up here with us," they told him. "We'll look after you." Just then a lovely blue swallow alighted on the branch not far away, and Little Billy saw a mother Minpin and her 2 children climb quite casually onto the swallow's back. Then the swallow took off and flew away with the passengers seated comfortably between its wings. "Good heavens!" cried Little Billy. "Is that a special tame bird?" "Not at all," said Domini. "We know all the birds. The birds are our friends. We use them all the time for going places. That lady's taking her children to see their grandmother, who lives in another forest about 50 miles away. They'll be there in less than an hour." "Well, can you talk to them? Do the birds, I mean?" "Of course we can talk to them," Domini said. "We can summon them any time we want if we have to go somewhere. How else would we get our supplies of food up here? The red-hot Gruncher makes it impossible for us to walk anywhere in the wood." "Do the birds like doing this for you?" "They'll do anything for us," Domini said. "They love us and we love them. We store food for them inside the trees, too, so they don't starve when the icy cold winter comes along." Suddenly all sorts of birds were alighting on the branches of the tree around where Little Billy was sitting, and the Minpins were climbing onto their backs in droves. Most of the Minpins had small sacks slung over their shoulders. At this time of the day, they go off to collect food, Domini said. All the grown-ups have to help in getting food for the community. The population of each tree looks after itself. Our large trees are like your cities and towns, and the small trees are like your villages. It was an astonishing sight. Every kind of wonderful bird was flying in and landing and perching on the branches of the great tree, and as soon as one landed, a Minpin would climb onto its back and off they would go. There were blackbirds, thrushes, skylarks and ravens, and starlings and jays and magpies, and many kinds of small finches. It was all very fast and well organized. Each bird seemed to know exactly which Minpin it was collecting, and each Minpin knew exactly which bird he or she had ordered for the morning. "Birds are our cars," Domini said to Little Billy. "They are much nicer, and they never crash." Soon all the grown-up Minpins, excepting Domini, had flown away on birds, and only the tiny children were left. Then the robins came in, and the children began climbing onto their backs and going for short flights. Don Minnie said to little Billy, "The children all practice learning to fly on robins. Robins are sensible and careful birds, and they love the little ones." Little Billy simply stood there, staring. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. While the children were practicing on the robins, little Billy said to Don Minnie, "Is there no way in the world to get rid of that disgusting, red-hot, smoke-belching gruncher down below?" "The only time a gruncher dies," Don Minnie said, "is if he falls into deep water. The water puts out the fire inside him, and then he's dead. The fire to a grunter is like your heart is to you. Stop your heart and you die at once. Put out the fire and the gruncher dies in 5 seconds. That's the only way to kill a gruncher." "Now, hang on a minute," Lily said. "Is there by any chance a pond or something around here?" "There's a big lake on the far side of the forest," Don Minnie said, "but who's going to entice the grunter into that? Not us, and certainly not you. He'd be on you before you got within 10 yards of him." "But you did say the gruncher can't see in front of him because of all the clouds of smoke he blows," little Billy said. "Quite true," Don Minnie said, "but how is that going to help us? I don't think the grunter's ever going to fall into the lake. He never goes out of the forest." "I think I know how to make him fall in," little Billy said. "What I want," little Billy went on, "is a bird that is big enough to carry me." Don Minnie thought about this for a while, and then he said, "You're a very small boy, and because of that, I think a swan could carry you quite easily." "Call up a swan," little Billy said. And suddenly, there was a new authority in his voice. "But I hope you're not going to do anything dangerous," Don Minnie cried. "Listen carefully," little Billy said, "because you must tell the swan exactly what he has to do. With me on his back, he must fly down to the gruncher. The gruncher will smell me and know that I'm very close, but he won't see me through all the steam and the smoke. He'll go mad trying to get at me. The swan will tantalize him by flying back and forth right in front of him. Is that possible?" "Well, quite possible, except that you might easily fall off," said Don Minnie. "You've had no flying practice at all." "I'll hang on somehow," little Billy said. "Then the swan, keeping very low, will fly off through the forest with the ravenous gruncher hot-foot in pursuit. The swan will keep just ahead of the gruncher all the time, driving him crazy with my smell, and in the end, the swan will fly straight over the big deep lake, and the gruncher, now traveling at terrific speed, will follow right behind. Presto! He's in the lake." "My boy," Don Minnie cried, "you are a genius. Will you do it?" "Call up the swan," little Billy ordered. Don Minnie turned to one of the robins, which had just come back from a practice flight with a child Minpin on its back. Little Billy heard him talking to the robin in a kind and curious twitter. He couldn't understand a word of it, but the robin nodded its head and flew off. 2 minutes later, a truly magnificent swan, as white as snow, came swooping in and landed on a branch nearby. Don Minnie walked over to it, and once again a curious, twittery conversation took place. A much longer one this time, with Don Minnie doing nearly all the twittering and the swan nodding and nodding. Then Don Minnie turned to little Billy and said, "Swan thinks it's a great idea. He says he can do it, but he's just a bit anxious because you've never flown before. He says you must hang on very tight to his feathers." "Don't you worry about that," little Billy said. "I'll hang on somehow. I don't want to be roasted alive and eaten by the gruncher." Little Billy climbed onto the swan's back. Many of the Minpins who had flown away a short while before were now returning on their birds. Their tiny sacks were bulging. They stood around on the branches, staring in wonder at the sight of this small human preparing to take off on swan. "Goodbye, little Billy," they called out. "Good luck, good luck." And with that, the great swan spread its wings and glided gently downward through the many branches of the big tree.